Welcome to That's a Hard No, the podcast about learning to say no and set boundaries to live our best lives. I'm your host, Heather Drago. You may think, because of this podcast, that I'm a boundary setting expert, but I'm not. I'm an expert at struggling to set boundaries. But you know what? I'm working on it, and it is getting easier. Follow along with me as I learn from fellow strugglers and experts so that you too can start saying no without feeling fear, guilt, or FOMO.
You don't know where to go. Unfriendly applications got you feeling low. You're not sure what to do. Weight of expectations is coming down on you. There's a phrase you should know. Tastes so much sweeter than hello. That's a hard no.
Nowadays, bullying can mean so many things. When I was growing up, it was a lot closer to the stupid jock shoves into locker, steal your lunch money and call you a loser depiction of a bully that we see on TV. And that's not to say that it wasn't hurtful and problematic. It was just easy to spot. It was physical, it was aggressive, and it was nothing like the bullying my kids faced, and even further from the bullying that kids growing up now are having to navigate. Nowadays, kids get called the most vile things in the comments of their own social media pages. They get mocked and ridiculed by their friends, sometimes to their face. Their insecurities get taken advantage of in a society that is already beginning to weaponize those insecurities against them. The emotional core of bullying is still the same. It's a power grab. It's about trying to gain something: social status, admiration, authority, by putting other people down. It's about making an in-group for yourself, and everyone that you target is part of the out-group. It's isolating. Being bullied makes you feel like nobody cares about you, like what makes you different makes you bad. So what do we do about it? Is bullying just evidence of some nihilistic truth about human nature? Is it just the result of systematic inequalities that trickle down to our playgrounds and schoolrooms? How do we fight the good fight around bullying? Our guest today knows how she can make a difference. Ashley Jones is an attorney and litigator who has made it her firm's mission to fight bullying at all levels of the criminal justice system. With degrees from Ohio University and Cleveland State, go Vikes, she and her law partners fight every day to make sure people get the advocacy they deserve. What is your history with bullying, and why does it matter so much to you?
I think all kids are,
To some degree.
Right. bullied, and some people hold on to those, stories into their adult lives, as
Sure.
you've talked about. So I probably do, and I probably have just kind of blocked it out. But I think I just always have felt a sense of what's right and what's wrong, and I think that's what drew me to criminal law, and that's what drew me to being interested in history and politics, and so when I got interested in practicing law, it was just this was a way that I felt like who were the people that needed representation. And to me, I didn't want to have a corporate job or represent some big company. Like, that just seemed too impersonal to me. It seemed like I would be able to fight bullying and help people that needed help by fighting for people who have been charged with a crime. And so people within the system look down on people, but then people, out of the system, just the way we talk about people that have been charged with a crime.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I landed there.
Yeah. Well, I would love to dig into sort of the inequalities of the justice system and how people are bullied. Years and years ago, I was part of a campaign. Our Attorney General at the time, who's now Governor, Mike DeWine, funded centers around the state called trauma recovery centers, and they were to help people who had been in the justice system have resources to help get them out of dangerous situations, help with emergency services, counseling, all kinds of things. And what I learned, to my dismay, is that there's all kinds of services like this available to people, but not if you've ever been in the criminal justice system. And it's often the services are accessed through prosecutors' offices. So people who have even if their family member had a bad relationship with the justice system, they're hesitant to reach out for help. So I found that so troubling that there's a whole segment of people like who definitely need help who can't access it. So I was really happy to be part of that, and I thought that was a very wise thing for our state to set up. But there's so many other inequalities.
Right.
So fill me in.
Oh, God.
I mean, I hear
How much
about
time
it
do
here
you have?
and there. I know.
I mean,
Explain it all.
I'll give you some examples just from every day. Okay, so today I was at the Justice Center, which is the courthouse that has Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas and Cleveland Municipal Court in it. And when you get off the elevator, there on every floor there's like a waiting area, right? And as people wait for their lawyer. And I've noticed this the past 12 years that I've been practicing. Every day you get off the elevator and everybody in the waiting room, for the most part, 90+%, are black and brown. How is that possible?
Yeah.
Right? It's jarring to get off the elevator
bet.
every day and you see it. Every single person waiting. So that's a huge thing that if you went to the Justice Center, you would see. If anybody went to the Justice, that's what they would see.
And is there a segregation of like all the attorneys and judges are Caucasian and others are people of color?
Yeah, I think there's a big
Yeah,
disparity.
That has to be jarring.
I think there's a big disparity. My law partner would know the numbers on that better. She's an African American woman, and she would know the number of lawyers that are of color, which is not many. And for instance, like the Common Pleas bench, which handles felonies and civil cases as well, but I don't touch that world. The majority of them are white. I think there's maybe 2 people of color out of 34.
Right.
People that are overseeing the cases.
Wow. So we talked about it trickling down, right? So like I guess this is where we philosophize about society
Where
and
we
things
fix
like
it,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. So like, I guess where do you step in and where do you find ways to counteract some of this sort of, I guess it's institutional bullying, we could call it in a way.
Yeah, I'm sure it has a name. I mean, my number one job, I think, always is to my client, right? And I have a duty to my client. And a lot of times that, in the course of representing them, it is to be kind to them and treat them like a human and treat them with respect, regardless of what they are charged with. And that runs the gamut in our firm. So we have a big culture on just how we treat people and how they make them feel. And clients who have had multiple cases will tell us, like, never, really, my lawyer's never listened to me before. My lawyer's never sat down with me before, and my lawyer never knew about this stuff in my childhood, or never knew about my mental health, or I didn't feel comfortable sharing, my mental health. So I think just the way that we treat people, and that can trickle down from judges, from everybody else, the way you treat people can make a big difference about what their experience is while they're there. It doesn't fix the disparity of the numbers, but it can change what their experience is, at least while they are there. And we hope that they felt heard and that they felt like we did the best job and the system did the best job, even though we know that it doesn't always work. A lot of times it doesn't work, and that from our perspective as defense lawyers, there are roadblocks, maybe some of these institutional things like you mentioned, that are put in our way. It's like you're driving a car and you know the route, right? And then all of a sudden there's like trees just like falling. You're like, there's not supposed to be a tree that falls down. How do I get through the road?
Yeah. So I want to be mindful that we're both 2 white, middle class women, right? Like, kind of speaking from a place of privilege. Like, we're not experiencing this now, although you are definitely fighting the good fight, right? My background, I actually grew up in a situation where I, as a child, I would go to prison visitation, and so I've touched the circumferences, the borders and things like that. So the thought that popped in my head as you were talking was, in our country we say you are innocent, presumed innocent, right? Until you're proven guilty. I once had a conversation with a lovely lady, lovely woman, lives in my neighborhood, really sweet lady. and we were chatting, and I had just been sent a notice that I was being called to grand jury duty, and I was kind of freaking out because that's like a 6-week commitment,
Right.
and I have a small business, and I was like, oh, I don't think I can do this.
Right.
And she happened to see me as I was getting my mail, and I was freaking out, and so we had this conversation, and she's like, I would love to be on jury duty. And I was like, why? And she's like, because if someone's been charged with a crime, they're guilty. That's why they're there. They're guilty. Like, why would they charge them unless they're... And I just sat there, like, looking at her like, you've lived in a bubble your whole life. What?
I mean, I can't speak for anywhere else. And certainly, I only have my own experience, my own anecdotal experience of doing this for a living. But, I mean, certainly there's been much written nationally and in the state about how we charge people in this county. And what that process is. So, people don't get to court without, having interaction with police, and then, prosecutor signing off on things. And so police officers make decisions about how to charge things, if to charge things, and whether or not to let somebody go.
The police on the spot make the decision.
Well, they're going to make a decision about whether or not a crime has, so there are lots of situations where we get a robbery in, right? And you read it and you're like, this isn't a robbery. This is a breaking and entering, a theft, whatever. But sometimes it'll get charged as a robbery.
Is that a more serious charge?
Yes, that would be a more serious felony.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I know nothing.
Or you could think about it not even in the context of like super serious crimes, right? But somebody gets pulled over. I mean, that's a whole other conversation about how traffic stops go. That's a whole other conversation.
Right.
But that's why it's so important, because the second I said that, people can think about what that means, right?
Right.
So someone gets pulled over, there's suspicion of an OVI, which is a DUI. We just call it OVI now. And it's like, oh, I'm going to let this person go or not. So I can imagine there are situations where the young black man he's not being let go, right? And the kid in Bay Village, speaking generally, is being let go. We know that happens.
Yep.
I shan't be aspect.
It's all good. No, it's all good. It's all good. But I mean, I think the little microaggressions, the accepted norm of bullying as children to other school children, as adults to the checkout lady when you're angry because you had a bad day and you start bullying her. Like, I think as a society, it's just like escalating. Like, and I don't know if it's because, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, that like, I think the pandemic really caused a lot of people to go through grief that they didn't really identify, like grieving their way of life and having to give up a lot of things. And then there's all this political tension going on all the time. And I think people are just like walking around angry, and they feel, and especially online, they feel they have the right to just bully. And I don't know how we fix that. Other than, individually we stand up, we set boundaries, we say, no, I'm not going to accept that.
Right.
As professionals, we work in the fields we work in and say, no, we're not going to accept that. We're going to treat people with respect.
Right. I mean, I've had lots of situations where I've had a prosecutor or a judge say something about my client, something derogatory, something improper.
Judging their character.
Just things that are just unnecessary.
Unrelated.
Completely unrelated. Those sort of comments, when those are from people who have a position of power over that direct matter that someone's in the criminal justice system for. Like, I'm here to talk about the case, and to me, what are allegations, and we will figure it out or have a trial or whatever. We have one job. Everyone's trying to do their job. While I guess my personal beliefs as to like justice and things like that seep in, but like my personal beliefs about a particular person
and their lifestyle
don't matter to the case. So like, why you would feel the need to have to make some sort of derogatory comment about my client when I'm here doing a job. Like, this is a professional setting. And it's just, that's bullying.
That's a Hard No is brought to you by Clever Girl Marketing, my full-service agency specializing in smart, strategic marketing solutions for businesses and nonprofits. Okay, so you're probably wondering, Heather, what's with the podcast about boundaries? Why not marketing? Well, Maybe in the future, but for now, it actually does relate, so bear with me here. Smart marketing, strategic marketing, requires knowing what to say no to and why. Businesses and nonprofits get inundated with marketing options and offers every day. We help you cut through all that noise, focus on your specific needs, and develop actionable strategies that are doable and actually make sense. Whether it's websites, SEO, email, social, or traditional channels, we're experienced in all of it. So if you need help figuring out your marketing, visit our website, clevergrowmarketing.com, and get in touch. Welcome back. Ashley and I talked a lot about bullying, about inequality. Ashley's job puts her front and center for all of it. The more we talked, the more it was clear to me just how much strength it takes for her to make this emotional space for her clients and coworkers. It's a good reminder, being an advocate isn't something you do, it's something you are. Ashley's fighting every day to make space for people who don't usually get fair treatment, and has had to make strong boundaries around that space. We learn a little more about what those boundaries look like and how she keeps her head on straight through all the madness. All right, so let's talk about that, the prosecutor's office and bullying in the courtroom. Like what? Tell me more. Let's gossip.
Yeah, right. Jeez, who is listening to this? I mean, there just are. So the system is supposed to work as a system, right? With a capital S. And systems need to be efficient and they need to be quick and you don't need to have impediments. People like me are an impediment to the system.
Right.
Not the way it was conceptualized, but the way that it operates now in my day-to-day life. I'm an impediment. I'm looking at things too much and asking too many questions. And so clients that want to exercise their rights to like a trial or a motion hearing or litigate things are like, sometimes I've had judges tell me like, we're not having a trial. Like you can work it out.
Isn't that like, wait a minute.
Wrong.
Isn't that like in our Constitution or something?
Yeah.
Like we're entitled to a trial.
Yep.
With a jury of our peers.
Yep.
Right? Isn't that? I remember
the
that
council,
from school.
the council.
Yeah. They can just be like, we're not going to have trial.
We just kind of forget about that sometimes.
How is that possible?
Just it's because bullying is pervasive. So judges will say like you're not gonna. Well, you better hope you win, or else. Because in my world, you'll ask a lawyer, "What's a trial tax?" Every lawyer knows what that means. It means if you lose, you're going to get whacked more than you would have, and if you would have pled guilty to something. So you have lawyers ask, "Oh, am I going to get a trial tax there? Am I going to get a trial?" Like these are the things that we have to like, as if the work isn't hard enough, right? And like life isn't hard enough for just like our own personal lives, and the law, which is like
Yeah, and does that follow you from? Let's say for this client, you pay the trial tax and they lose, and then they get the worse judgment than they would have. Does that follow you then with other clients? Like that judge remembers you, and then I think you kind of pay that tax for a little while.
I think that's possible.
Yikes.
Now I do think sometimes like judges will yell at you about that, but then if you stand up to them, it's almost like they want you to like. It's like almost like a sign of respect. Like a weird like psycho initiation thing, right? Where it's like now you've given me this offering or something, right? But yeah, you have to think we think about things like, oh, is that really good like for the client? Like got to think about what
will happen.
And then to have to advise clients. I mean, we've had to advise clients all the time. Oh, well, look, because we're in this courtroom, we really don't think you should do this. If we were across the hall, we would totally do this. We have to make those determinations.
Because of a judge.
Because they have so much power and nobody understands this and nobody pays attention when they're voting.
So if you ran the justice system in the perfect world, how would you fix it?
I mean, look, not everyone has to think the same things and politics don't really come into play. I would just ask people to be kind. Just not be terrible. If it were your child, your son gets accused of this, how would you want him to be treated?
Right.
What would you want the judge to do? You would hire the best lawyer, right? Yeah. Probably one of these people that you're terrible to. And you would want them to do every single thing that they could.
Right.
But we lose sight of that. Judges lose sight of that. And another thing, so many judges are former prosecutors. And some prosecutors are great.
Right,
I mean, it's not all a bad prosecutor thing. I'm not trying to necessarily rip on prosecutors.
I've had friends who are prosecutors.
But, there is a culture at certain places that is not good. Yeah. So, I mean, when there's, when there are some people that have become wonderful judges that have been so kind and so fair that I really didn't see coming. But, it's just, it's just a bad.
Doesn't that translate to everything? Just be kind. Just see that person as a human,
Correct.
right? And talking about being in the system, I mean, I could go off on this for an hour, but when my kids were in school, they're both neurodivergent. I'm neurodivergent. We've got ADHD. We've got a little bit of on the autism spectrum here and there. Like, it's kind of part of the genetic. My child calls it the genetic jackpot. And so I would get called into these meetings with counselors and teachers, and they would start to tell me how to parent. Mm-hmm. Because they were frustrated that my kid didn't fit into their syllabus and their system. And I would get furious and I would say, you don't tell me how to parent, I won't tell you how to teach.
Right.
But if you can't reach my kid because they're not fitting your program, that's your job. Your job is to figure out how to reach my kid. And that's when we started fighting with different, IEPs and stuff like that. But it was really hard. And part of it, I think, is that teachers and any governmental, quasi-governmental system is so underfunded and so stretched thin, and people are so tired that they want you to fit in, the cog in the wheel. I think of Charlie Chaplin and the cogs in what is that modern life with the cogs in the wheel, and he's like being fed through the wheel. That's they want you to fit, and if you don't, you just get chewed up by the wheels.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So more funding, more kindness. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know.
You and I
have no idea.
No one will listen to us.
It's above my pay grade.
If they would make us the queens of the world,
that would be great.
Fix it, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So tell me about. So you're a woman, and I would assume is a male-dominated. I perceive to be a male-dominated field of attorneys. What's that like? I'm sure in law school and in just practicing, there's, chauvinism and jerks
that's life
stuff.
Yeah.
Like, tell me about bullying and boundary setting in that environment. And interestingly, you and I both have mine's primarily, I have a few males in my company, but you're completely female,
yes,
correct?
We have a completely woman-owned firm, and we only have women that work for us.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a prerequisite and a requirement, but it's how it's just kind of shook out. We've been able to build a good team, and we've liked everybody and haven't had to, as we've grown, we've just had women who've applied. Yeah. So I don't know, maybe they sense it from the website. Actually, funny story, a guy called a couple weeks ago, and he said, I see that you're all women, and I'm not opposed to that. He goes, will you represent me? Do you only represent women?
Oh, really?
And I said, no, but I that is so funny. It's one person said that. Yeah. But I'm like, no, we'll represent you. He goes, okay, I didn't know. I thought maybe you guys only wanted to represent women. I'm like, not the worst idea, although not great from business perspective, because men are charged with things a lot more than women, I think. But it just was funny. Yeah. But okay, I'm trying to remember your question.
You're a woman in a male-dominated field, high pressure, high conflict kind of field. Tell me about bullying and boundaries and how you've learned to navigate them. And
with a smile and a nice remark. When I was like 9 months pregnant at the courthouse, I had a guy make a comment to me about like whether or not we were going to need to call my OB, because I was like, what? He was an old guy. I was actually really offended by it, but I was just like, I'm not, whatever, like things like that. Like, I'm here working, like I'm 9 months pregnant. I'm here. I don't know, the baby might come out later today, but I'm here. I'm good for right now. We're going to do this pretrial. So, I mean, you get those types of comments that, I still have people, I check into a court, especially if I'm not that familiar with it, and they'll think that I'm the client. Like I'm not, I'll be like carrying which I don't carry a briefcase. I carry like a Coach backpack, and I'm usually, I'm dressed down today, but usually I'm like in a suit. It's very obvious. Like, ma'am, how can we help you? I'm an attorney. I'm checking in, waiting for my client. Like, things like that happen a lot.
Really?
A lot, yes. A lot. I hear women talk about it all the time. My colleagues talk about it all the time.
And the men don't experience this, or how can I help you?
I can't imagine that they do.
They walk in their suit and
Yeah.
they're like, oh, dude's an attorney.
Right.
Right.
I can't imagine that they get that type of question.
It seems so bizarre to me, 2024 now.
Right.
Like, how can that be?
I'm like, I don't know what else you would think. And sometimes I've been a little snappier than I need to be with like deputies, and I'll be like, I don't know how to make it more clear to you. Like, I'm not sure what else I could have done to make it more clear to you that I am an attorney.
It's almost like you need like one of those press flak jackets
right.
that says attorney at
right.
law.
Right. Like, I'm not a visitor.
Attorney.
Like, I don't know what else to do besides put like a giant like arrow on my head. So things like that happen, which are just kind of like, you just kind of brush them off. But like some of those like micro things like kind of like
over time
get in your craw a little bit.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like maybe not having the best day, or you're already feeling a little like overwhelmed or stressed.
Right,
and then it's like, you're already feeling like maybe you're having an imposter syndrome day, right? And then that happens and you're like, shit. Like, I don't even look like a lawyer.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Probably those questions don't just come from men. Do you sometimes get asked those things by women?
more from men, I think. Yeah. But I think I don't think. But yeah, I think I've had it asked from women before as well. Yeah. Like older people usually. Yeah. But because women are awful to women.
Oh yeah.
So it's so you get it from all the different angles.
Yeah. I've heard and seen things in meeting rooms where someone says something
right.
And you're just kind of what? Like what?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And that's when you're like, okay, this is not about me. Right. This is obviously about you. You're having like a moment. I'm going to let you have your moment because this is not about me.
Yeah. So how have you taken these values you have about no bullying and being kind and being respectful? How have you infused the culture of your company to practice what you preach?
I've tried really hard, like we talked about, with just how we treat people, right? And how we treat people that work for us. I try really hard not to say work for me or my, everything is really team. And it's not just saying the words, right? It's acting out those words. So we hired an associate attorney who passed the bar in November. And she had been a law clerk with us before. And so trying to give her an experience that's different than what my partner and I had as young lawyers. Because we did not have, I opened up my shop right away. So I didn't really have a bad experience because I don't know any other way to make a living. I never had a job, right? Is the only way I know how to do it. But, as a law clerk or as a law student, making sure that she has a different experience than what we experienced from just mentors who were supposed to help us.
Yeah.
And so trying to infuse that, we're a team and you can always ask questions and we want you to grow and we want you to develop personally and we want you to, not have, your life is not going to be this job. We're going to work really hard, but we're going to have fun and do things on, Fridays we'll do, not every Friday, I wish it were every Friday, but sometimes we'll do Firm Friday where we'll go to Topgolf or we'll go to the spa or just do things to get out of the office, but do things together.
Right.
So that everyone can kind of just like reset a little bit because it's stressful work.
Yeah. Do you find you're educating these women about like, you're going to face these things when you walk into the Justice Center and here's how we handled it and how you can handle it and things like that?
Things come up every day where it's like, oh, we didn't tell you this. And then she'll say, I did this. And then the judge said I should have done this. And the judge was really nice about it, but I'm so sorry. And I'm like, first of all, you were in a great room and the judge gets it and she's fine. But we didn't tell you that. We didn't even think about that. Like we've forgotten what it's like to be a brand new lawyer who's been a lawyer for 2 months. And I've told her what I told you. I've told her, okay, you're going to get on this floor and they're not going to know who you are. And I said, you're just going to walk into the courtroom. You don't look at them. Do not make eye contact with the deputies because they're going to ask you what you're doing and they're going to ask you who you are. Yeah. And you're not even going to make eye contact. You're just going to walk straight into the courtroom. Yeah. So to avoid that.
Yeah. So two things come to mind. One is a very dear friend, Jennifer Stringer, who's been on the podcast before. Her father had a saying: "As you rise up the ladder, you reach down and you pull people up the ladder with you." Which sounds to me is what you're doing, which is
trying. Yes. Thank you.
Bravo. The other thing is, my son is a history nerd and a political science nerd. And so he's told me these hilarious stories of people who have like gone in and taken over, like during the Iron Curtain era, would like go in and take over whole checkpoints and stuff. And he said, all you have to do, all these people did, is they wore the suit and they had the clipboard and they confidently walked in and just like took over.
Yeah.
And like held up traffic for, days. Or one guy took over a castle in some place. Like
Yeah.
all these crazy stories of people who just like walked confidently in, looked official, had a vest on or a hat or a thing,
Yep.
and people totally believed them. Like the first person who, I think, stole the Mona Lisa, they basically like put on like the maintenance uniform or whatever and just like confidently walked in, middle of the day, everyone could see them.
Yep.
Like, walked out with it, and it was just like you said, don't make eye contact.
Yep.
Just like, I'm meant to be here, I'm official,
I belong here. And that's something my grandma, who my daughter is named after, told me, and I carry this every day, that she's like, you belong at the table. And there are lots of times where I'm
I
the
love
only
that.
woman at a table.
Okay, mark it. That's the title of this episode. You belong at the table. Thank you. This is what we
you're
struggle with
welcome.
every week,
Oh,
is titles. You just did it for us.
I think
Thank
I think about that all the time, because there are lots of times where it's like I'm the only woman, and I'm like, or why do I want to go to this meeting? But if I don't go,
Yeah.
then there will be no more women.
Yeah.
Then the table won't change.
Yeah. When you're in the courtroom, maybe not now, but in the beginning, earlier years, were there moments of imposter syndrome? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't really belong here. Like,
Yes.
Tell me about that and how you got through it.
Those still exist, and I think most lawyers would tell you that they do, especially when you're, because of why you're there and because it matters. That it's like, if you're not a little bit nervous, like, you probably don't care, right?
That's a very good point. Yeah.
But you obviously, it's not as debilitating to me as it used to be. And there will be times I'd be afraid to speak up if the judge, you can tell if a judge is in a bad mood, or you can tell when the ship is going down and someone's going to prison, or, things get contentious. And you're like, do I really want to add fire to this? But, unless something is spoken in a courtroom with a court reporter taking it down, like, there's no record of it, it didn't happen. And like there are things that we have to do and have to say, even when they are, hard to do. There are arguments that you have to make on behalf of your client, and that's what advocacy requires.
Right. So how does that extend to your clients, that they belong at the table? Like, how do you include them? How do you help them understand their rights? And how does that extend outside of the courtroom?
So we try really hard to have communications with them to break down, questions. I think we're pretty accessible by phone, and clients text us, and, we'll have Zoom calls with them just to like answer questions that they have. Something that we started doing was we started distributing a welcome packet whenever people hire us that has a lot of jargon that they will hear in their criminal case, and we have found that to be helpful
Like
for
to
people.
decode it for them.
Like,
That's
what is a
nice.
pretrial? What is your arraignment? What does that mean? What is a bond? How long is this going to take? Just things like that.
Because most people are pretty foreign to the criminal justice system.
right,
They're kind of lost and deer in the headlights.
Exactly. So, those questions that people are always calling and saying, well, what is the pretrial? Or what is my arraignment? We try to answer those, give them that information for them to like review. And I think that makes them feel like more collaborative with the whole process. But I think just being accessible helps them. If you have a question, ask. Like, there's not really a dumb question.
Yeah.
You've never done this before. For a lot of people, why would you know?
So for those who work with you and are able to get the outcome that they want, do you find that they feel more empowered, that they feel heard? Like, how do you...
It's a tough question, because there are so few outcomes that are exactly what somebody wants. Even if somebody were found not guilty, they still had to go through this, and they're still angry about having to go through it, or
It's still
like
very stressful.
unless you could just like completely go back in time, would really be a lot of times what somebody like that would be the only thing that would make this better. And we tell that to clients, like, unless we could go back in time and this never happened, you're not going to walk away from this and be like, even if you're completely exonerated, you're still going to have like baggage from just this process. But I would like to think that people feel empowered and like they've had a voice. And if they don't, we try to make it our goal that it's not because of us, right? That it wasn't because of something that we said or that we did, and that we recognize that there was something that there was something that was said that was unfair, or there was something that happened at court that we're sorry that happened, or we're sorry that somebody treated you like that.
Yeah. So I kind of want to circle back to bullying a little bit. I also want to think about young women going into very high stress, high stakes jobs. What advice would you have for a younger you entering what is a very contentious field about navigating bullying, how to set boundaries? Like what advice would you give young women or yourself in hindsight?
I think my ultimate advice would be that no one is paying attention to you like you think they are.
Yes, I say that all the time. Everyone cares about themselves. They don't care about you.
The things that you're worrying about.
Yeah.
I'm going to look stupid. I'm going to sound stupid. I'm not going to know what I'm doing.
Right.
They're going to, they're not even it's probably not even on somebody's radar. And if it is, it's going to be gone and, like this, because there's going to be something else that comes along. So the things that we stop ourselves from doing because
we're
we
afraid
are
to make a fool of
that we're going to
ourselves.
look stupid. I don't want to look stupid. And I struggle with this like a ton. Like I really struggle personally with this, professionally with this, of just not wanting to look like I don't know what I'm doing. It's a control. It's a control thing. It's a childhood trauma thing. It's just of an issue of control. So, but I recognize that, right? I'm trying to work on that. So that's probably my ultimate advice is that like if it's just if the question is just do I think I'm going to look stupid, that if that's the only thing holding you back from saying the right thing, doing the right thing, standing up for yourself, standing up for somebody else, then that's not good enough reason. That's just not a good enough reason.
Very good. I like that. I like that. So tell people how they can find you.
So we are on all the socials, and I really hope that you guys follow us. Actually, I think you guys did follow us.
We follow you.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. And we'll put links on our website.
Oh, thank you.
But
so
just,
so it's AJ. So it's AJLJ Law on Facebook and on Instagram. And I have a personal TikTok called Lady Lincoln Lawyer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, I saved that for our meeting today.
Oh, boy. I'll have to go check that out.
So I'm trying to become a TikTok star. So please follow us on all those fun things and
fun.
see our embarrassing dances.
Do you keep files in the trunk of your car?
Probably, amongst other things.
We do watch that show at my house, so
it's a good
Lincoln Lawyer.
It's a good series.
Yeah, it is good, and the book's good too.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
me.
I really enjoyed this. I'm sure we could dive deeper into lots of these topics. I mean, some of these are very heavy topics, and but I really appreciate your insights into the criminal justice system, and also just your experience being a woman professional. Professional woman. Or just professional. How about that? Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks. That's a Hard No is a production of Clever Girl Marketing, my little agency in Cleveland, in partnership with our friends at Evergreen Podcasts. Many thanks to our amazing team, including Laura Del Rosario, our production and marketing coordinator, Noah Fouts, our amazing producer, editor, and composer who wrote our theme music and performed it with his band, The Big Leagues, and our new video producer and editor, Kay Holmberg. You can find show notes and resources on our website, and you can find other fun stuff on our socials. We're Hard No Podcast. Find your no, then say it with me.